Personality politics. Nothing to see in the budget.
Just wait for silence.
Order. The Honourable Mark Banassi.
Thank you, Mr President. My question without notice is to the Minister for Water. Minister, with regards to the Connectivity Expert Panel interim report, it's made clear in this report that there's been no appropriate modelling and analysis to assess the volumetric or socio-economic impact or even environmental outcomes of proposed targets. Minister, how can stakeholders give feedback on these targets when they have no clear idea how they will impact them?
The Honourable Rose Jackson.
And I thank the Honourable Member for his question. It's good to have some engagement in the important work happening often behind the scenes in the water portfolio. The purpose of releasing the interim report of the Independent Connectivity Panel and having a series of online and offline engagement opportunities. The members of the panel have been available in webinars, they have been going out into regional New South Wales to talk, is to make sure that there is a very, very long consultation and engagement process. Because not unreasonably, and I've actually been on the record myself previously in budget estimates and perhaps also in this House, accepting criticism that in the past consultation by the department has not met the standards that I would like to see in terms of dialogue with the community in relation to these important issues. And when I hear that feedback and accept that feedback and reflect it back, I then obviously try and change the way things are done to make them better. And that looks like a lot of talking. And I accept that we are out there with what is an interim report that does not have detailed modelling on socio-economic impact, environmental impacts or other work. That is all out there and we are transparent. But we made the decision, even with some of that work still to do, to start the conversation now, as opposed to the alternative, which is to kind of beaver away, internally, trying to get that stuff done, which we should, but not have that be a public process, not have that be a process to which engagement was welcome. One of the reasons that we are doing engagement now is, well, that modelling has to be done, and we want stakeholder feedback on that, on the type of modelling that they want to see, on the kind of impacts that they want to see assessed, on the timeframes for those things. So in terms of the premise of your question, how can stakeholder feedback reflect the modelling? Well, I welcome feedback on what kind of modelling do you want to see? What kind of detail can we go into? What are the types of things that you'd be looking for as a foundation for change? How quickly or slowly would you like that to work? And I'll use that information to make further decisions once we have the final report, which, as you note, we don't have. Once we have some of that modelling done, which you note, we don't have. So, as I said, I just want to make really clear this has been done deliberately in response to questions that the Honourable Member himself may have asked, I can't recall, based on the consultation that your department does isn't always very good. And I copped that. And so now I'm really trying to make sure that every opportunity for engagement is lent into. And yep, that's a lot of conversations. But when we are talking about our incredibly important and precious shared water resources, I do think we need more dialogue as the basis for change and not less.
A supplementary question, the Honourable Mark Banassi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the Minister for her candidness there. In the Minister's response, she speaks about the independence of the expert panel. How does the Minister reconcile those comments with the fact that 9 out of the 13 references in the interim report to non-government documents actually reverse references back to Professor Fran Sheldon and the Wentworth Group, who is a member of this panel, and have demonstrated a bias against farming and irrigation?
The Honourable Rose Jackson.
Well, I don't accept the premise of some of that question. I mean, it's independent from government. That's the whole point. And they're not decision makers. Government's decision makers. We will make decisions collectively based on the feedback we receive from the community about our path forward. But the point of them being independent is that they're independent of me, of the department. They are providing advice not based on what I want them to say, but based on their expert evidence. And look, I think, Professor Sheldon and the Wentworth Group are eminent water scientists who bring an incredible amount of expertise. I mean, they don't have an agenda. They're not conflicted. They're not bringing any bias to their work. They're bringing their expertise. They're bringing their years and years of working as academics and professionals in this industry. Now, does it mean that everything they say should happen will happen? No, it doesn't mean that. I mean, when you put your hand up to be in politics and you accept the sort of rough and tumble of decision making, that's very different to being an academic. I value their views, I value their expertise, but they're not in it. They're not balancing the kind of things that we have to balance as government. But that doesn't mean their voice shouldn't be heard. And I don't think it's fair to suggest that their voice is compromised. I don't think there's any evidence that they're biased. I don't think there's any evidence that they have a bent for or against a particular group. I think there is evidence that they are eminent experts bringing a particular point of view based on years of expertise. That is a point of view that's balanced against other interests on the committee, First Nations interest, hydrological modelling interests, socioeconomic impact interests, and that's all coming together independently from me to provide advice. But as I said, that advice will be considered with a fulsome consultation process before any decisions are made.
I'll just rise to take note of the answers given to my questions, and I do generally thank the Minister for being detailed in her answers and being candid and talking about the consultation process and that it's going to be a lengthy one, and as it should be. In terms of the webinars and the in-person consultation sessions that she spoke of, the feedback I've received from stakeholders is basically what it looks like is these are some arbitrary targets that we want to reach in terms of connectivity, in terms of downstream flows. We've got no data on what that looks like in terms of volumes. We've got no data in terms of how that will maybe affect you in a socio-economic point of view, or even what the environmental outcomes will be that will be delivered. What do you think? Well, it's kind of hard to give an informed opinion. Then will that then inform a final report when you don't have that data? And that's the constructive feedback that I'm passing on. In terms of the second part of the question, in terms of my concerns around independence, in terms of whether the Wentworth Group are biased or not, I would draw the Minister's attention to the half a dozen water inquiries and submissions that we received from them from the last Parliament, even from the committees that I ran, but also the Select Committee into Floodplain Harvesting. I think there is a problem, or potential problem, where one member of the panel is continually being referenced and footnoted for their work on a piece of work that they're on. Sure, they may be eminent scientists in water, but I'm sure there are other eminent scientists that could also be referenced and used. I think it creates a bit of a perception of bias. The interim report talks about how to manage conflicts of interest, but there's no details of how that's been managed or disclosed within this interim report. I would hope that in the final report that would be something that is detailed, because at the moment it looks, and this is the feedback I'm getting from the stakeholders, it looks like self-promotion and self-aggrandisation. So I'm looking forward to the further consultation. The Minister sat on many water inquiries with me and many budget estimates on water, and I think we're aligned in saying that the department under the last government could have done things better. So I am very pleased to hear that the Minister is taking steps, and I look forward to seeing the final report and the final outcome of this connectivity reform.